So here it is, folks. The day has finally arrived where we actually get to write some code. I told you this, that was the last of the PowerPoints last time. Well, this one's kind of a hybrid of PowerPoints and not, right? So let's look at this funny word here, CRUD, and what does it mean, what does it stand for, and what's all this CRUDing business here, right? So we're going to talk about what CRUD is. It's an acronym, and then we're going to talk about applying that acronym to databases, tables, columns, and records. Depending on how things go, the records may come later, as in not today or as in not on this video, future day. So the question is, what can you do in a database? You can create things, right? That's a good starting point for what our C stands for. We can create stuff, right? What else can we do? You can't, nice, trying to fit the R in there, right? Remove. That is true, you can remove, however, in this case it stands for read, right? Or retrieve, right? Get things, right? What about U? Update, and then the D? Delete, right? So this is an acronym to help us remember it. Personally, I prefer my acronym better.
What is it?
I'll show you. It is delete, update, insert, select. DUIs. I just think mine's more entertaining. And actually, this gets you closer to the actual commands. Those are the 4 commands you'll actually use when dealing with records. But that aside, let's go with the industry standard here, which is the CRUD acronym, right? So the next question is, what can you create or retrieve or update or delete? What can you do that to? Like, yeah, so what kind of stuff can you retrieve, right? You can do it to databases, I've heard somebody say that. Tables, records, users, views, we haven't learned about views yet. Constraints, we've briefly talked about them, we'll learn more later. Everything, that is, those 4 red letters, that is your life as a database person. That's all you do. It is a simple life, yeah. It has many intricate facets to it, but it is a simple life, right? You can create stuff or go get stuff, retrieve stuff, look at stuff, in other words, update stuff or delete stuff. That's it. It's pretty much all there is to it. And it applies to all of those things. All right. So let's take a look at what the command kind of looks like. If I wanted to create a table, right there on the first line there is the code for creating the TAL database, okay? If I want to, then now I'm just talking about CRUDing databases, right? You can see the title up there, creating, reading, updating, deleting databases. If I want to create a database, I would type that command, and we'll talk more in depth about the command in a minute. If I want to retrieve it, I can say show, I can see all the databases, and you've seen me do some of these commands already. If I want to update it, this one's a little, we're sort of fitting a square peg in a round hole here a little bit with updating. You really don't update the database itself. You're always updating stuff in it. You're updating the tables or the columns or the records. But the database, you either just create it and use it, or you don't. There's really not an update to that. All the updating really happens to the tables and everything in it. Okay, and if I want to delete it, I can drop the database, all right? To the code. So I'm going to open up my SQL here, and you guys can do the same if you get your batch files ready to go, or your aliases. Alii, is that the plural for alias? So if all of you guys should have imported the tables. I think we got that all figured out. So if we say show databases, or I meant to say databases, with a semicolon, this is us viewing or retrieving, or the R of CRUDing, our databases. And you should have on here Colonial, Salmaris, and the TAL database at the very minimum. Probably more stuff too, but at least those 3, okay? Now, if you're going to create a database, which you actually have an upcoming homework assignment, which is to create a database for a boat marina, is the business. It's called Alexamara Marina. And you're going to be making a database. It's got 5 tables. I've given you all the data. You just have to write the code to build it, right? But it's called Alexamara Marina. So I can show you this one line of code is how you make the database. You say create database, database. You have to learn how to type first. And then it's called Alexamara. That's the name of it, okay? Or if you're making the TAL database, TAL. Or you're making the Solmaris database, whatever you're calling it, right? So I'm just,
Type one of these that are already listed here.
you'll get an error if you try to type one that already exists, yeah. So if I do that, you get an error. Can't create it because it already exists. But anything else, so like let's go TAL2, right? And poof, I just made a database, and if I show databases, there it is, TAL2 right down here, okay? Oh, I hear errors popping up. Okay, don't be super worried about keeping up with me necessarily, because I am recording, but if you do get stuck a little bit, maybe I can help you. We'll maybe pause the video a couple times, or I can help you on after class or something. All right, so far so good. We just created a database. It's super, I mean, it literally is one line of code. It's 3 words. It's it. You're done, okay? Now, there's a little pattern here that I want you to ingrain into your brain. I'm going to brainwash you now, right? Here's the pattern. I'm going to create tile number 3 now, all right? So you ready? It goes like this. Say the thing that you're going to do. I'm going to create. Say what kind of thing I'm doing it to, a database. I'm creating a database. Give it a name. Just about every one of these commands that modify table structure, that have to do with table structure, will follow that pattern. Say what you're going to do, say what you're doing it to, and give it a name. Or say its name if it already exists. Okay, so let's see that in action. Let me delete the TAL2 database. So say what I'm going to do. I'm going to drop, that's the keyword for deleting a database. Database, say the thing I'm doing it to, say its name. That's it. So now if I do this, I'm saying the thing I'm going to do, dropping, saying the thing I'm doing it to, database, and I'm saying its name, TAL2, and now it's goodbye, show databases. I just turn on my cap locks there. And now TAL2 is gone, okay?
Is there a hotkey to just retype like what you already have, like you did it before?
Yes, the question was, is there a hotkey to retype what you already have? And there is, and that is your arrow key. If you hit the up arrow, it'll show the last command you did. If you hit the up arrow again, it'll show the previous one before that, and so on. All right, any other questions about creating a database? I mean, there's nothing to it, right? Creating and deleting it's super easy. Let's switch back over here. And let's take a look at creating tables. Creating tables is a little bit more intricate. So, but look at the pattern though. It's still same thing. Say the thing you're going to do. Say the thing you're doing it to. Say its name or give it a name. In this case, there are going to be some parameters that go along for the ride with it. Okay? For retrieving, there's how do we look at the tables? We say show tables. We've done that before. If I want to look at the columns, there's a couple ways to do that. I can say show columns from rep or describe rep. You guys have seen me type describe many times, right? And then altering the table. Again, say what I'm going to do, alter, say the thing I'm doing it to, a table, say its name rep, and then pass in some more parameters. If I want to delete a table, I drop table rep, okay? And these slides, you have access to these. They're part of the lecture notes today, so you can download them and look at them as a little help sheet if you want to, okay? So let's take a look now at this table right here. Let's as if we were going to create the rep table. For your homework assignment, for the Alexamara database that you're going to be building, you'll have this stuff here. You have all 5 tables in this form, and you'll have to look at it and write the code that's going to build the database, right? And so I'm going to show you right now on the screen what this code will look like if I'm going to build the rep table. There it is. Now don't try to type this, okay? Because on the command line it's weird, and we're going to look at a better way to do it. So don't bother trying to type this. And notice I called it rep 2 because I already have a rep, right? But if I were to create this table, this is what I would do. And you can see what's happening here. I say the thing I'm going to do, I say what I'm doing it to, and I say its name. And then this part, as I mentioned, is the parameter part, right? These are the parameters. Well, what are those parameters? Well, you can see over here, I have a field called repnum that's a char2. Okay, repnum char2, right? That one also happens to be the primary key, so I add that to the end of it there. And then I put a comma and I say last name char15. last name, char 15. So typing that out, just like that, that will build that table, right? Now I'm gonna do it on the command line right now. I don't want you to copy this on the command line because 99.99% chance you will typo, right? Especially since you're new to these commands. And if you typo on the command line the way we're gonna be doing it, it'll be hard to recover from. So we're gonna do a different way in a minute, but I do wanna show you how this works on the command line. It's important to understand that. So let's go back to the command line and let me get this to a resize window here. And where are you? Right here. Ooh. All right, that's enough information, I think, right there. Yeah. So again, do not do this on the command line, please, because I don't want you to get stuck and have to reset your command line and everything. But I'm going to say the thing I'm going to do, create, say the thing I'm doing to table, say its name, rep2, right? Now, before I can do any of this, I need to be in the TAL database. How do I get in the TAL database? Use TAL. See, already I've made a mistake because I didn't type that first. Use TAL. Now I'm in the TAL database. So now create table rep2. And now, because I have not placed a semicolon here, the command will not run even if I press enter. It's expecting the semicolon to terminate it. So I'm going to make it on multiple lines here. I can hit enter, open up my parenthesis, hit enter again, and until I put a semicolon, nothing's going to happen. So here we go, rep num, and it's a char 2. Okay. Next up, last name. Nope, I left it off on purpose. Last name is char, and it's a char 15. First name is a char 15. And street, char 15. And city, char 15. And state, char 2. This is exciting to watch, I bet. And postal code, char 5. Commission, decimal 7,2, and then last we have rate, which is decimal
Using the O in the commission?
3. What's that?
Using the O in commission.
Every mistake you see is intentional.
Oh.
Yes. So, yes, they're all intentional. Okay, and including this one right here. Okay, they're all intentional. All right. So now, which is another reason I told you not to follow along with me. I told you you would make, yeah, you would make a no, because you would make a typo that I made, and I'm doing this on purpose. All right. So create table rep2 and open parenthesis all the field names, including all the mistakes, because we need to learn how to fix those mistakes, right? So now when I run it, I have 3 mistakes that you guys have noticed, right? I missed the primary key, I spelled commission wrong, and I put the wrong decimal rate. It should be 3,2, not 3,1, okay? But the database doesn't know that, so it's going to build it, right? So now if I do show tables, there's rep2, so I can say describe rep2, and there it is, and it looks exactly the way I told it to, with the missing O and the 1 instead of the 2 just fine, okay? So the question is, how do we fix that, right? We realized we made a typo, but it was too late. I messed it up, and it's too late now. How do we fix it? Any thoughts?
Update.
Create a new one.
You can make a new one, so I have to go back to the command line and retype that. I could do that, okay? There's also a way to actually modify an existing table, okay? We're going to learn that technique in a minute. But for now, what I want to show you is a better way to write your stuff on the command line. So all of you should have set up on Notepad++ or Macs. You probably set up a Sublime or something. So you have a text editor like that. So I'm going to open up Notepad++ here. And I'm going to save it on my desktop as just whatever you want to call it, just queries.sql, right? Make sure it's .sql. It doesn't even have to be .sql, but if you do, it'll give you some syntax highlighting, right? All right, so now I'm going to write this thing here again. Where's my PowerPoint? Okay. I'm going to write this same thing again, but I'm going to do it in Notepad++, and I'll pause the video for that. There's no reason to have to watch me do that twice, unless you're here live in the class, then you get the exciting watching me type it twice business, all right? Okay, through the magic of editing, I have written the command has appeared on the screen right here, all right? So create rep2. Now I have on here purposely the same mistakes that I made on the command line, right? When I ran it on the command line, it runs and you're stuck with it. Now you have to go update it and modify it, which is a technique we'll learn about maybe a little bit later today. But at the moment, if I did it on the command, I'd have to redo some stuff. Well, now that I have this here, I can just drop table rep2. Table's gone. I can copy and paste this, and it rebuilt the table. Now, as soon as I copy and pasted, I realized, oh, I typoed, whoops, right? So how do I fix it? Well, come back over here and add primary key and change that to have an O for commission and change this decimal to be a 2. And then I can, using my up arrow, don't use your up arrow because it'll cycle through all of those, drop table rep 2. Again, I've just deleted that table again. Now I'll paste in my new version that I fixed, and behold, I've made the table, right? So I highly, highly, highly recommend that when you're going to be typing commands, you put them in a text editor like this, right? And then you just copy and paste them into the command line, and then if you screw up, you can delete it. Now, you can't just drop a table that's been in production for 10 years, right? Goodbye job if you do that, okay? You cannot do that, okay? But if we're building this brand new from like day one and we're just building it for the first time and we screw up, no big deal, just delete it and redo it, right? So I definitely recommend you use a text editor for this kind of stuff. Now later we're gonna learn about a tool that's a very pointy, clicky, click here to make a new table and click, 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 and you got a table, right? But you need to know what's going on in the background first, okay? So we're gonna do this the way we're doing it right now. Okay, so questions about creating a table. Feel okay about that? So you have this LXMR assignment. The assignment is create the LXMR database and then create 5 tables. And you'll follow this process right here. Now, there's a couple things we can do here. The way we did the primary key, that's not the only way you can do it, okay? So let's go ahead and I'm gonna delete this rep2 table again. Stacy, how do I delete it?
Drop table.
Yep, and then the name. Yep, now it's gone. Now I'm going to do it the other way. You can also create primary keys like this. Create your fields, then at the end, comma, primary key, and in parentheses, put which field is going to be your primary key. That also works, right? So let's copy that in.
Is there a best practice for this?
The good question, and I'll answer that. The question was, is there a best practice? And we'll talk about that in a second. So here we go. Let's look at the description, make sure it worked. And sure enough, it is a primary key, right? So the answer, for most stuff in the database, the answer will be, it doesn't matter. Do whatever you want. There are a few exceptions to that, and when we get to them, we will talk about it. And the answer will be, when you ask what's the best practice, my answer will be, it depends. That will always be the answer, right? Okay, so let's take a look at a scenario here where it would matter which way you went. Let's look at describe order line. Okay, this one's a little bit different. Okay, this is a dual primary key, right? So let's go ahead and build this table here. Let me get my text editor. I think I can just put it right here. Nope, not you. That right there is fine. All right, so here we go. I'm going to just push this down. And together, we're going to make this table here. Okay, this table right here on the screen on the left. We're gonna make a new order line. So, Jose, give me the first line.
Create. Order line,
Oh,
oh, sorry, tab table,
table, yep,
order line,
order line, and we're gonna go with order line 2 since it already exists. All right, and I'll fill in the parentheses, that's my contribution. Jeff, what's next?
Order non-jar five.
Yep, order num, char 5, we're good. And we're gonna hold off on the primary key business for just a minute. Okay, Gareth, next?
Item num, char 4.
You guys getting that picture here, Jasmine? Yep, decimal. And this time I am not meaning to do any typos, so let me know if you see any. All right, David, next?
Quoted price, decimal 6.
Price, decimal. 6.2, okay. Now, primary key, let's tack this on at the end here. Primary key, order num, and item num. Right? So when you're dealing with the dual primary key, this is how I do it. I don't believe, now I could be wrong, and I have been before, but I don't believe that you can do it any other way. We're gonna test that theory in just a minute, okay? But let's go ahead and do this. Copy that in there. Oh, I just copied the whole thing, we don't want that. Okay, paste that in there. And we should have show tables. Sure enough, there's order line 2. So describe order line 2, semicolon. And there we go, it's primary key, dual primary key. Okay, so I'm gonna drop it, drop table order line 2. And I wanna try this the other way. I'm 99.999% sure this will not work, okay? But why not give it a shot? What happens if I put it in both places, right? I don't know, let's find out. You ready? Nice, yeah. So when you do it that way, this is what I thought would happen. I just wanted to make sure. When you do it that way, it's thinking that I'm trying to define 2 separate primary keys, that's not a thing. You can't do that, right? So that's why you have to go with the other syntax. So you asked earlier if there is a best practice. Well, when you're doing dual primary keys, there is an only practice, right? And if you're doing single primary keys, well, maybe just to stay in the habit, you always do it this way because it's easier so you don't confuse yourself, right? So, but it depends, right? As I said, the answer would be it depends. Okay? All right, so how do we feel about creating a table? Feel pretty good about that? It's really not that hard. SQL programming is one of the easiest programming things you'll ever do in your life as a programmer, okay? All right, checking the notes here. All right, let's take a look at I believe it's the customer table that has this issue. Describe customer. Notice here that the customer name says null is not allowed, right? Why is it not allowed? Because if you're gonna be one of our customers, we have to have a business name, right? So we made that we, the TAL distributors business, made that a business rule that you have to have a name if you're gonna be in our database. So how do we do that? Well, I'm gonna recreate the customer table. I'm not gonna create all the fields because that'll get tedious, but we'll do some of them. And we'll do it again as a group here. So I'll start us off with customer 2 again, of course. And I'll put this in here. And who did I not get? I think Stacy, you're the only one that didn't have participate in that last round. So what's next?
Customer num,
char 3. And I'm gonna go ahead and put primary key since it's a single. All right, just get it over with. All right, and I'm just gonna do customer name, char 35. And we'll do just the street, that's all. I'm not gonna make the whole table. Obviously, if we were doing this for real, we'd make the whole table. So the question is, I wanna tell SQL that customer name is not allowed to accept nulls. And I do it by saying not null. That's it. Just tack it onto the end. So you'll find a pattern here. The pattern is this. Anything here, and I'll run that query in a minute, or that update, that command in a minute. But the pattern is this. If I want to do any of this stuff in here, when I'm building my table, you just tack it on to the end of whatever field you're building. So I'm going to say customer name, and then I'm going to say chart 35. And then if I want it to not be null, I'll say not null. If I want it to be a primary key, I'll say primary key. If I want to have a default value, I will say default, and then I'll give the default value, right? So let's run this first to make sure it works. So here we go. We're going to make customer 2. Runs, describe, what that was. And there we go. It does not allow nulls. Okay? Dig it? Okay, let's give it a default. Let's do the rep table. Describe rep. Okay? So let's quickly build a duplicate of the rep table. Now, there is a way to copy a table. I'm not going to show you that until the end of the semester, though. Okay? I don't even want you to know that it exists, but I'll show you that later. The reason why is because I want you guys to get ingrained into your brain what it looks like to build a table from scratch. So even though it may be a little bit tedious to watch me do this a bunch of times, sorry, that's the way it's going to be. Okay, so create table rep. So here we've created the rep table, and this is going to be rep 2, I guess. We'll call it rep 2. But I want to add default values. Okay? Right now, if we look at the rep table, there are no default values. The default value is null. What does that even mean?
They can not exist now. There's no information.
Yeah, but so what happens? I mean, what's the default all about? What's its purpose? Why does it exist?
If there's nothing entered into that value, it's always that value.
So we're getting close.
It creates it with default value of whatever you tell it, unless you give it something different.
Right. So I think all of you are implicitly saying this, but you're not saying it out loud, which is when you create a record, right? When you add a record, then if I don't add a last name, it'll just make the value null, right? So the default has to do with every time you add a record to the database, okay? So I think you guys all intuitively knew that. I just wanted to make sure we said that out loud. So the default value is only there for the times when you're going to create a record, you're going to add a record to the database, and if you don't explicitly say, hey, the last name is this, then it'll just put null in the field, okay? So I want to give a default value for commission of 0, which makes sense, because when you first start, you don't have any money, you don't have any commission, you're brand new. So watch this. At the end of commission right here, before the comma, I say default, then I put the value, 0. That's it. You don't say default equals, you just say default 0. And this company is based out of California, so we're going to just say that the default state, default is California. Notice I put quotes around the CA but not around the 0. Why?
One's a character, one's a decimal.
One's a string, right? California's a string, and the other one's just a number, right? You could put a quote around the 0 and it'd be fine. All right? So now when I build this table here, we'll see a slight difference when we compare it to the original rep. Oh, rep 2 already exists? Well, hello. Okay, rep 3 then. Thought I had I didn't have a 2. So describe rep 3. And notice now for the default value it says California, and for the commission rate it says 0. So if I add a new sales rep and I give them a number and a last name and a first name and everything, but I don't give them a state, it'll automatically just add California as a state. And if I don't specifically mention their commission, it will automatically give them a commission amount of 0. And that makes sense because the commission is their total that they've earned since they've been working there. Maybe everybody starts at a default commission rate of 0.05% or something. We can deal with that maybe in a minute, okay? So how do we feel about creating tables now? That's all, you'll need to be able to do all of these things, defaults, nulls, or not, not allow nulls, primary keys, which I forgot to do on this Rep 3. You'll need to do that for that Alexamara homework assignment, okay? All right, so if we're good on that, let's take a look at how to modify the table if we goofed up. Instead of recreating it every time, like for example, I forgot to put a primary key in here, all right? So let's look at the keywords we've learned so far and kind of keep track here, okay? We've learned the create keyword. We've learned the drop keyword, right? That's it, right?
Describe.
Oh, describe, yep. Describe, and we'll put those kind of on the same thing together, yep, describe and show. Okay? Now we're gonna learn the modify, or actually we'll go the alter, or the later, and modify. Alter, modify, all right? So here's how this works. The alter keyword is used for altering the table, okay? Altering the table. So here's a weird way to think of it. Okay, you're gonna have to get a little religious with me here. When you think of an altar from a religious perspective, what is that? It's kind of like a table, right? It's a sacred table, but it's kind of like a table, right? So the alter command goes with the table, right? So I'm altering the table. You don't alter columns, you don't alter anything else. You alter tables and nothing else. So a lot of times people forget which one do I use modify for the table or alter for the table? And it's alter for the table. So think of it as an alter table, like one word, okay? That'll help you. All right, so I'm going to alter table rep 3. Remember, say the thing I'm going to do, say the thing I'm doing it to, say its name. Always, always, always. Okay? Now I'm altering the table. Next, I want to modify the column. So this is still one command here. Modify column, that's what I want to modify, rate. Okay? And again, say the thing I'm going to do, say the thing I'm doing it to, say its name. Now, if I left it right there, what have I modified rate to do? What have I modified it to?
Modified to 0.
I've modified it to, it'll give me an error actually if I stop here because I haven't done anything, right? So the next thing is I need to continue on saying, well, I want it to be for the default value. Now don't type this because this is wrong, all right? So don't type this. Default value to be 0.03. That's what I want it to be. But the problem is I've just not mentioned the data type now. So because I didn't mention the data type, it's going to be like, wait a minute, what data type am I now? Because I'm altering the table. I'm modifying the column to be rate without a data type. Well, it's going to be like, dude, you need to give me a data type. So whenever you're modifying a column, always mention the data type, because otherwise you're just telling it to change the data type to nothing, right? So we still need to put in, even though it's already there, 3,2, right? Then we say default is 0.05 or whatever. This is altering the table. This is modifying the column. These are the parameters. Dig it? We run it. And let's describe rep 3. And sure enough, now the default is 0.05. The next time we meet, we're not done yet, but the next time we meet, we will look at actually inserting records and seeing it apply the defaults and all that. We're going to look at that another day. But how we feel about modifying the column? Well, what if I wanted to change the name of the column? You can actually do that too with our friend change. It's another keyword. So listen carefully to this statement. Change can do everything that modify can do plus one more thing. Change can do everything modify can do plus one more thing. What's the one more thing? Change the name, right? So you might say, well, why use modify? Why not just use change every time? Because it can do everything modify can do. Here's why. Let's say I want to change the postal code to be called zip or something like that, right? We're in the United States, and that we don't call it postal code here. We're not from Canada. Come on. All right, so next, I want to alter the table called Rep3. I want to change the column that's called postal code. What do I want to change it to? I want to change it to zip with a char of 5, and everything else will stay the same. So now if I describe it, it's called zip, char of 5, and everything else is fine. So why wouldn't I use change in all the cases I would use modify? Any thoughts on why that is? Look at the parameters that I'm expected. I'm expecting to have a name and a name. Change expects 2 name parameters, the old name and the new name, right? Well, the problem with that is, let's get out of this line here, and let's go alter table rep3, change, we'll change rate. Actually, yeah, let's just say we want to change the default for commission rate down there to 0.04. So change rate, but now that's the first name parameter. Well, now it's expecting the new name parameter, so I got to put rate again. Because I'm not changing rate's name, I'm just changing its other values, right? And then I have to put in decimal 3,2, and then the default of 0.04. That will work, and that's fine, because what this really says is, hey, change rate to the new name rate, and then make the default 0.04.
You couldn't write like change column, print decimal.
Oh, I meant to put column in there, actually. That was a typo. But the problem is, because change, the way change is built, it's expecting the old name and the new name. And rate, why put it in there twice? There's no need to do that. This will work, but what's the point? Okay, just use modify. Only time I use change is if I'm actually changing the name. All right, next up, because I forgot my primary key, and that was an honest mistake, describe rep3. Notice this is not a primary key here. Well, I want to add a primary key. So here's a new keyword for you, add. I'm going to, now anytime, listen to this carefully, anytime you're going to change or modify something inside of the table, a column, a field, or some of these values or whatever, you're going to be altering the table. So your first step will always be alter table. Alter table rep3. And now what do I want to do? Say the thing I'm going to do, add, and what am I doing? I'm adding a primary key. Okay? And then what is the primary key? Say its name, repnum. Okay? Alter table rep3, say the thing I'm going to do, say the thing I'm doing it to, say its name. Next up, add, say the thing I'm doing, add. Say the thing I'm adding, primary key, and say its name, repnum. And now, we have a primary key. I can just as easily get rid of the primary key by dropping it. Like this. Alter table rep3, drop primary key, and I don't need to explicitly name it because there's always only one primary key, so it's just implied. And there we go, we got rid of it. Okay? I can drop columns.
Can you drop the column if it has a primary key already?
The question was if you have a column that has a primary key, can you drop the column even though it has a primary key without dropping the primary key first? And the answer is yes, you can. So let's go ahead and add that primary key back in just to demonstrate that. Primary key is back. As you can see, it's there. So now, if I wanted to drop the repnum, alter table rep3, drop column repnum. And goodbye. There you go. The repnum's gone, primary key's gone, everything. Notice nowhere ever, at any time, ever, was I asked, are you sure you want to do that? Right? This is not Windows, folks. This is the command line, right? You're on a server here, and this is raw command line right into the server data, the database server. What you change is, I'm gonna go with permanent, but there are some precautions you can take to undo things. We'll learn later. But for now, this is basically permanent, okay? All right, so I think that we've covered everything in just right about the right amount of time too. So let's go back to our acronym here, CRUD. Right? We've learned how to create, or we've been exposed to, right? It's gonna take some practice, how to create tables and databases and columns, right? So create a database or a table, we use the actual keyword create. To create columns, we use the keyword add, right? For retrieving, we can do show, describe, yeah, okay? For updating, we use modify or alter, modify, change. For deleting, we use drop. That's it.
You always have to start with alter, right?
If you're doing something to a table, yeah. Changing a column. So the question was, do we always have to start with alter? And the answer is yes. If I'm modifying anything inside of a table, like a column or column properties, then alter table is the first thing you type, and then type the modified column code. Yeah, very good. So that's part one of CRUD. This is all structure stuff. We did not look at records at all, right? We looked at building the house, not putting the people in the house, okay? So any questions about anything we covered today? Going once, twice? Yeah.
So if you were to, say, have records in one of the tables and then go in and put a default in, would that update records with a null value?
So the question was, if I have records, like a table with 1,000 records in it, and then after the 1,000 records, I decide I want to change what the default is, what will happen to all the records that are already in there? And the answer is no, it won't change those at all. It only changes stuff moving forward. We're actually going to experiment with that the next time we meet, when we start getting into insert statements. We'll see a lot of fun stuff there. Okay, we good? Have a groovy weekend, folks.